Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kroll's weekly threat intelligence briefing for the 2nd of March, 2026. My name is Ryan Hicks, and speaking with me today is Mark Messer and Ethan Afri from the threat intelligence team. So this week we'll be covering the following topics. So first, be covering the first kind of findings we have of a newly discovered command and control campaign in GitHub. Then looking at a Cisco SD-WAN critical zero-day. Mark looking at POLAREDGE infections against Cisco devices. And lastly, Ethan going over Lazarus adopting Medusa ransomware targeting healthcare. So first up, we've recently identified a multi-operating system command and control campaign operating via a GitHub account that shifted between names, as you see on the screen, kind of shifted across recently, and the repository was later wiped. Prior to the wipe, the repository contained cross-platform downloaders, victim logs, executables, and password-protected archives. There are also test logs exposing the developer's environment, which looks to be a Kali Linux host, and also exposing their global IP v6 address, which is geolocated to India. This, combined with Hindi guidance comments embedded in the scripts and the presence of a dedicated OLAMA user and service, we assess that it's highly likely the actor operates from India, likely leveraging a kind of local LLM to assist in the development of these tools. Operationally, the actor maintains tools for Windows, macOS, and Linux using initial downloaders to pull next stage scripts from multiple code hosting platforms. So you see there GitHub, GitLab, Codeberg, Gitea, and Bitbucket all kind of used to pull from. And in terms of persistence observed throughout the tools on Windows, they used registry run keys and a scheduled task, notably one called syscache underscore user underscore update. macOS tooling relied on launch agent using a custom plist configuration file, and then Linux tooling used systemd for persistence. Across all operating systems, the second stage components conducted reconnaissance on the host and then exfiltrated results to actor-controlled repositories using embedded API tokens. And additional payloads were also discovered in the repository. There was some Rust-based binaries, as well as a VLC DLL sideloading technique, which abused libvlc.dll, whilst also attempting to open a low PDF. And functionally, the kind of binaries replicate a kind of a script-based model in terms of retrieving tasks from code repositories, differentiate kind of versions for the kind of control, and then execute and then persist kind of and then repeating across the tooling. Number of indicators of compromise are in the report so far, so that we've just sort of discovered and pulled out so far are in our report. And we're also currently continuing deeper analysis of the files discovered, and we'll be releasing a deeper technical analysis from our malware analysis team soon. Okay, next up, looking at a zero-day. So Cisco disclosed a critical zero-day in its Catalyst SD-WAN products, specifically looking at an authentication bypass flaw, which is CV 2026-20127, affecting both the SD-WAN Controller, which is formerly called vSmart, and the SD-WAN Manager, which is formerly vManage. And the flaw allows a root unauthenticated attacker to bypass authentication and obtain administrative access by sending crafted requests to an exposed controller. It has a CVSS score of 10, so critical. And the vulnerability affects the following deployment types at the top there. So on-premise, Cisco hosted SD-WAN Cloud, the Cisco managed, and the FedRAMP environment version of those. So Cisco Talos, the UK's NCSC, and then partner agencies in the Five Eyes community report that this vulnerability has been exploited dating back to 2023. The activity is tracked under the cluster UAT 8616 and is assessed by Cisco as a highly sophisticated threat actor, which they mention that in some instances chains this particular zero-day with an older privilege escalation flaw, which is CVE 2022-20775. And in response, so Cisco released emergency patches and updates across multiple release families to address this and as well as some other vulnerabilities. And so organizations are certainly urged to install these fixes immediately. Cisco also published indicators for hunting, including auditing the auth log file to help detect any past exploitation activity. And then real kind of a key at the bottom there, if any organizations have used any of the affected products since 2023, it's recommended to carry out a compromise assessment to determine evidence of exploitation or potentially persistence mechanisms that still remain within on the device. So next up, hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll be talking about CVE 2023-20118, which is continuing to deliver POLAREDGE infections. Now, this may have been reported back in 2023. However, Sekoia is reporting that threat actors continue to abuse the CVE to deliver botnet implants and web shells to edge devices. The vulnerability affects several Cisco Small Business Router models via web management interfaces. Vulnerable unpatched devices allow for remote code execution via web requests, abusing the delete cert and export cert functions within the CGI bin/config_mirror.exp binary. User input is executed in an RM command and then ultimately in a system call without a proper input validation. Think of this, by the way, as being somewhat similar in exploitation to like a SQL injection. Several payloads were observed by the Sekoia team, including an initial web shell payload and a secondary TLS backdoor titled POLAREDGE. Initial remote code execution was often used to deploy a simple web shell from 45.77.152.227, replacing the router's authentication CGI script and user local easy access www CGI bin user login.cgi with the web shell script for persistence. If a specific set of parameters are provided during the authentication, a special command is executed to upload a shell script and then execute that uploaded command. The TLS backdoor delivery begins with a malicious script execution. This performs some environment actions, downloads and executes the backdoor, and then deletes various web service logs as well as itself, finally creating a lock file so that it cannot be executed in multiple instances. FTP get is used to download a file titled t.tar from 119.8.186.227. Multiple files are extracted and executed from this archive, creating a POLAREDGE ELF payload for execution in etc., flash, etc., as well as adding commands for execution to system files to ensure persistence on startup by relaunching a backdoor. POLAREDGE itself allows for two different operation modes. Firstly, there's a back connect mode where the backdoor functions as a client to download files. Secondly, within a debug mode, you can modify the configuration of the backdoor, which is stored within the final 512 bytes of the ELF binary and XORed with the single byte key hex 11. Initially, the binary loads a TLS certificate and private key, then creates and binds a socket, entering an infinite loop to listen for clients. Upon connection, the client's TLS handshake and a child process is created in order to handle the client requests, allowing for command execution on the infected host. The C2 server is also contacted with a notification, including the server host name and bound port. The primary objective of the malware campaign so far is not clear. However, mostly advertisement and click fraud has been observed. Per Cisco's advisory, Cisco has not and will not release software updates that address this vulnerability. There are no workarounds currently, and administrators may disable the affected feature as described within the workaround section in order to do their best to make sure this isn't continuing to happen. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Mark. Finally, Ethan.
Thanks, Ryan. North Korea's Lazarus group has expanded its cybercrime operations by adopting Medusa ransomware in recent extortion campaigns, marking the first confirmed link between the state-backed threat actor and this ransomware platform. Security researchers have observed Lazarus deploying Medusa in a successful attack against a Middle Eastern organization and attempting unsuccessfully to breach a U.S. healthcare provider. Medusa, operating since 2023, has claimed more than 366 victims across critical sectors, including healthcare, education, legal, and manufacturing. Since November 2025, 4 U.S. healthcare and nonprofit organizations have appeared on Medusa's leak site, with average ransom demands around $260,000, though demands can reach into the millions. Investigators link the activity to Lazarus based on the use of malware historically associated with the group. including the comeback or backdoor, blinding can remote access Trojan, info hook stealer, RP_proxy, Mimikatz, and Chrome stealer. While tactics resemble those of Andriel subgroup, tools that overlaps with Diamond Sleep complicate precise attribution. Analysts assess the shift to Medusa reflects a pragmatic strategy, leveraging established ransomware infrastructure rather than developing custom strands, enabling faster monetization to fund the DPRK's broader intelligence and military objectives. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ethan. So that's what we have for this week. If you do have any questions, please contact us at cti@kroll.com. Thank you and see you next week.